Welcome to the MIT App Inventor My Piano tutorial. In this tutorial, I'll be going through how to create your very own working piano keyboard on your mobile device. I'll also be introducing the concept of procedures, a very useful abstraction tool that will be used a lot in more advanced apps. To get started, go ahead and download the starter file for this tutorial from the description in this video. Once you've downloaded it to your computer, open up App Inventor. To upload the project, go to Projects and then Import Project from My Computer. Then you can choose the file that you just downloaded. This is the empty template. Notice that it has no components in it except for the media, which has all of the piano notes that you'll be using. Notice that each of the imported notes has a very specific name. When you eventually use these notes, make sure that they're spelled exactly as they're shown here in the media. This includes case and spelling, since App Inventor is case sensitive. If you have even one small typo in trying to call the name, it won't match up to the one listed here. This is the same for other variables as well, so make sure that you keep them consistent and ideally follow the convention that I will be offering. You can also see that the screen is in landscape mode. This will make the app look better when you eventually use it on your device. If it's not in landscape mode, you can go into the Properties of Screen 1, scroll down, and set the screen orientation to landscape. First, you're going to want horizontal arrangement to put in everything horizontally. So go into Layout and drag in a horizontal arrangement. Now go into the Properties and set its height to 50% and set its width to fill parent. This means that its height will take up 50% of the screen and its width will take up the entire width of the screen. Now you're going to want to make the piano keys. Because you want to be able to tap the piano keys in your app, these will have to be buttons. So go into the user interface and drag a button into the horizontal arrangement. This will your C key, so let's go into the Components section, Button 1, click Rename, and let's rename it to C Note. Next, let's go into the Properties and just change the color so that we can really see it. Let's change it to red. And change the height to fill parent so that it fills the entire horizontal arrangement, and its width to 10%. That way we can fit other keys. And let's change the text to C so we know exactly what note is going to happen here. Now we can do the same thing for the next note. Drag in a button, rename it to the next note, which is D. Change its color to orange. Set its height to fill parent. Set its width to 10%. And set its text to D. You'll do this for the rest of the notes. These notes will be C, D, which we've already done, E, F, G, A, B, and high C. Once you've set up all 8 notes, here's how your designer should look. As you can see, there are the notes in the screen, and the components have them properly named. Now, we're just going to need a couple more buttons and labels. So in the user interface, drag in a button and a label underneath your horizontal arrangement. These will be used for recording the keys that are played, so let's name them as such. Let's call the label the Notes label. Go into its text property and make it empty for now. For the button, let's name this Clear Button and set its text to Clear Notes. This is because this button will delete the notes that have been played in case you want to refresh it. The last thing we'll need on this side is an actual player so that it can play the notes for you. So go into Media, click Player, and drag it into your screen. Notice that it doesn't actually show up on the screen, but actually at the bottom as a non-visible component. That means that it still runs in the background, but you don't actually see anything. Let's rename this to Note Player. And now we're done with the designer section. Let's go on to the blocks part by clicking in the upper right-hand corner. Now, in the blocks editor, we want to set the blocks such that when you tap on a note, the corresponding sound is played. So, let's start with C. Scroll down to C note and drag out the When C Note.click button. When the C note is clicked, we first want to tell the player what sound to play. Scroll down to Note Player and drag out the Set Note Player.source. Drag that into the dot click. The note that we want to play is one of the medias that we were already inputted. You can actually see the media down here as all the imported sounds. So we're going to want the note to be the C note. Pull in a text box, connect it to the source, and type in cnote.wave. This tells the note player what note to play. Now that it knows what to play, we want it to actually play it. So go into Note Player and do call noteplayer.start. This will actually play the note. Remember, we also want to display the note using the Notes label. So go into the Notes label drawer and drag out the Set Notes Label.text. What we want it to display is the note itself, so go under Text, drag in that text box, and put in the letter C. And there you go. Now that when you click the C note, it will play the cnote.wave sound and set the notes label to C. Think about how we might do this for D. It's the exact same. So go ahead and right-click on the block and click Duplicate. This makes an exact copy of all the code we just did. It's pretty easy to modify this for D. We're just going to need to make a few changes. Now, instead of when the C note is clicked, we want it to be the case when the D note is clicked. So go ahead and change this to D note. We also want the sound to be D note.wave, not C note.wave. So change that in the text box. And we'll want the label to show the letter D instead of C, so change that as well. There you go. You set the behavior for 2 of the notes. Go ahead and check it now. Go to Connect to your app, AI Companion, and use your device to see if you can play the 2 notes. At this point, you should be able to have your C and D keys working. They'll both play the sound and show the corresponding note at the bottom. But the rest of the keys don't work. We'll be adding that functionality next. Now, think about how you might incorporate this note behavior for the rest of the notes. Go ahead and pause the video if you need to. If you thought that it was to copy the code for the C note and D note even more and just change that for the rest of the notes, you'd be correct. However, this method of copying and pasting blocks does have some drawbacks. What if instead of wanting to do 8 notes, you wanted to do 50 notes or 100? It would take a really long time to copy and paste all of that. And if you made one small mistake and maybe gave it the wrong note, then it would be really hard to find that mistake. This is why we're going to use something that App Inventor gives us, which is called a procedure. A procedure is a sequence of code that's stored under a procedure name. That way, instead of repeating that sequence of code over and over again, you can just call that procedure name whenever you want it to run. Let's set one up now. Go under Blocks and click Procedures, and drag in the top block. Since we want the procedure to play a note, let's change its name to Play Note. And since we're going to want it to input a note, let's click on the little gear, click Input, and drag it in. And let's rename it to Note. Now we have a procedure called Play Note, which has an input called Note. Now, drag the code from your C Note block into your Play Note procedure. As you can see, it will do the same thing as the C note. However, we want it to be more general. Instead of the note being definitely C, it could be any of the letters. So, it can't just be cnote.wave. Let's drag that away. It will be the note.wave. So we need to actually join together two different parts. Go under Text and drag in a join block. Next, take in a text box and drag it into the bottom. Since the second half of the media notes always end in note.wave, go ahead and type that in. The first part of your note will be the input. So hover over Note and drag in the Get Note. Then you connect the whole block to the Set Note Player. This way, the Note Player source will be the note.wave. You'll also want to change the notes label. Instead of it being C, it'll just be the note. So, remove the C, hover over Note, and drag Get Note. There you go. That's the completed Play Note procedure for now. So instead of having this large piece of code, you can just call the Play Note procedure. To do that, go into Procedures and drag in the Call Play Note. For the cnote.click block, the input will just be C. So go under Text, drag it in, and give it the input of C. Now, whenever the C note is clicked, it will call the Play Note procedure with an input of C. Go ahead and do the same thing for D note. You won't be needing this part anymore. Copy the Play Note procedure, drag it in, and change the input from C to D. You can do the same thing for the rest of the notes using only two pieces instead of a whole procedure. Congratulations! You've implemented a procedure in App Inventor. Procedures are very useful because they can make a complicated set of blocks into one simple call. This process of going from complicated to simple is known as abstraction. This is very useful because it can make code that is very blocky easy to understand. And it stops you from copying and pasting and having lots of redundant code, as well as makes it easier to try and find mistakes since you only have it once. Now, you'll want to complete the remaining click events for the remaining 6 notes. To do this, you can go ahead and copy the cnote.click block over for each of the notes while changing the note that is clicked as well as the input to the Play Note call. Try and do this yourself, and we'll test it out. Once you've copied it over, go ahead and connect again and try running it and make sure that it plays all of the notes correctly. And there you have it. With your procedure, now all 8 notes play a sound. You'll also see that the text at the bottom changes corresponding to which note you've just pressed. But Clear Notes button doesn't work yet because we haven't added that functionality. We'll be doing that now. Here are the completed procedure calls for each of the 8 notes. Now, let's make a change to our app. Instead of just displaying the current note, let's display all of the notes pressed in sequence. In the play note procedure, let's update the set noteslabel.txt so it uses a join block. This will update the current notes instead of just replacing it. So let's take this off and set a join block. Go under text, check it in. Because we want to join 3 different words together, click on the little gear and add a 3rd string to the join block. Now, as you can see, there are 3 places to put a string. We're going to want to join the original notes label text with some new inputs. So let's get the original text by going into noteslabel.txt. Now, before adding the new note, we'll want to add a space in between so that it's not just a continuous string, but it instead has some breaks in between. So let's go to text, drag an empty text box in, and type in just the space key into that box. That way, there's an empty space between each continuous note that is played. Then, we're going to add the note. And there you go. This will add the new note to the current text. Now, sometimes the notes label might get a little bit too long, so we're going to want to clear it. We clear it using the clear button. So, when the clear button is clicked, drag that in. You're going to want to set the notes label text to an empty string. So, go into the notes label, set noteslabel.txt, and again, give it some empty text. And there you go. Now you can test your app out on the tablet, again going to connect to the AI companion using your own device. Play with your piano. Try to play all the keys. You should hear the corresponding notes, and they should also appear in the notes label. And there you have it. This is the completed piano app with all of the keys working. Let's have a go. As you can see, all of the notes work, and it's able to show the notes that have been played, and it's able to clear the notes at the touch of a button. If you've gotten this far and have it working as shown, then congratulations! You've completed this piano app. There are lots of ways in which you could expand this. In the tutorial, we've included sound files for the flats and sharps of this keyboard, so you can incorporate other buttons to have those sounds. You could also incorporate and import your own sound files, such as a custom drum beat, to add as well. See how you can expand this app yourself.